Let's get right into it. The story of Stephen Hawking really is one of the most powerful paradoxes of our time. You have this mind that could roam the entire cosmos, yet it was housed in a body that was almost completely still. It's an incredible story of how the most severe physical limitations you can imagine actually unlocked a brand new way of seeing the universe.
So picture this. It's 1980. We're at Cambridge University. Stephen Hawking is about to give his very first lecture as the new Lucasian professor of mathematics. I mean, this is the same chair Sir Isaac Newton once held, a huge deal, and he kicks it off with this bombshell of a question. He wasn't just accepting the job, he was challenging the entire future of his field from day one.
But here's the thing, Hawking himself didn't say a single word. As a student read his painstakingly dictated lecture, what the audience saw was a man silent in a wheelchair. And yet, the ideas being unleashed in that room were about to lead an adventure to the very edge of space and time. That contrast, right there, that's the heart of his story.
So, to really get a handle on the sheer scale of his mind, you first have to understand the reality of his physical world, especially at that pivotal moment. By the time of that big lecture, amyotrophic lateral sclerosis, ALS, had just been relentless. He couldn't walk, he couldn't write, he couldn't even feed himself. His speech, well, it was nearly unintelligible unless you knew him very, very well. He described it himself as being in a prison, but from that prison, he was about to completely redefine our universe.
Okay, so let's rewind a bit, because that image of Hawking in the chair is so powerful. It can sometimes completely overshadow the vibrant, adventurous, and, let's be honest, kind of rebellious young man he actually was.
You know, at Oxford, he was anything but a recluse. His friends all said he was brilliant, for sure, but also famously lazy. There's this great story where his tutor assigned like 13 really tough physics problems. His friends were pulling their hair out, struggling to solve just one or two. Hawking? He starts on them the morning they're due, and by lunch, he's solved 10 of them. It was then, as one of his friends said, they realized we weren't on the same planet.
And this right here, this shows a side of him most people just don't know about. He wasn't a natural athlete, but he found his place as a coxswain for the college rowing team. He was popular, right in the middle of this loud, fun-loving crowd, and apparently he was known for being a bit of a daredevil, steering these really tight corners on the river. This was not a frail kid, this was a young man living life to the absolute fullest.
And this just perfectly captures his wit and his sheer confidence. So he's in his final oral exam at Oxford, right? His entire future is on the line. They ask him what his plans are, and he just lays out this legendary line. The examiners basically realized they were dealing with someone way, way smarter than them, and yeah, they gave him the first. He was off to Cambridge.
But it was at Cambridge, just as his journey into the cosmos was really about to take off, that his physical world was about to shrink dramatically.
The diagnosis was just brutal. He was only 21 years old. They told him he had a motor neuron disease and that he probably had about 2 years to live. A death sentence. But, and here's that paradox again, the diagnosis didn't end his life. In a strange way, it's what really started it. You know, as Hawking himself said, he'd been pretty bored with life before. But that prospect of an early death, it gave him a reason to live. It focused that incredible mind like nothing else could have.
So, that 2-year prognosis? Well, it turned out to be spectacularly wrong. I mean, just look at this timeline. He didn't just survive, he absolutely thrived. He became one of the youngest fellows of the Royal Society, he took Newton's old chair at Cambridge, wrote one of the biggest best-selling science books of all time, and he even got to float in zero gravity. Incredible.
Okay, so this is where the story gets really, really fascinating. Because it turns out his physical decline was directly tied to his greatest intellectual breakthroughs.
See, as the years went by, he lost the use of his hands. Now, for a theoretical physicist, not being able to scribble out long, complicated equations, that should have been a career ender. But for Hawking, it was a new beginning. It basically forced him to ditch the old tools of the trade and come up with a completely new, purely mental way of doing physics.
To get what he did, we just need a quick handle on Einstein's idea of spacetime. So forget about gravity being some kind of pull. Instead, picture the universe as this giant, four-dimensional fabric. Big, massive things like stars and planets don't pull stuff towards them, they bend or warp this fabric, and everything else just follows the curves.
This classic image shows it perfectly, right? The sun is like a heavy bowling ball you've placed on a trampoline. It creates this dip in space-time. So a ray of light from a star far away, which just wants to go on a straight line, has its path bent as it goes past that dip. Gravity, at the end of the day, it's just geometry.
And that was Hawking's genius. Since he couldn't write out the equations, he trained his mind to just see the geometry. He started visualizing the actual shape of spacetime, basically playing with black holes and entire universes as if they were just geometric pictures inside his head. And this totally unique way of thinking is what led to his most famous discovery, what we now call Hawking radiation. By just picturing what happens right at the very edge of a black hole, he realized something incredible. Contrary to what everyone believed, black holes aren't completely black. They have to leak a tiny bit of energy, they glow faintly, and eventually, they just evaporate. It was a revolutionary idea, and he came up with it almost entirely in pictures.
But Hawking didn't just want to solve the mysteries of the universe for himself, he wanted to share them with everybody. And that desire is what turned him from a brilliant physicist into a true global icon.
So back in 1988, he decides to write a popular science book. But he turned down all the fancy academic publishers. Why? Because his goal was simple but also really audacious. He wanted his book about cosmology to be sold in airport bookshops. He wanted it to be for anyone and everyone. And wow, did that ambition pay off. A Brief History of Time became this record-shattering phenomenon. It spent a mind-boggling 237 weeks, that's more than 4.5 years, on the London Sunday Times bestseller list. It introduced millions of people to the wonders of the cosmos.
And he became so much more than a scientist. He played poker with Einstein and Newton on Star Trek. His famous synthesized voice was sampled by Pink Floyd. He had a beer with Homer on The Simpsons. He became this universal symbol of the limitless potential of the human mind.
So when we look back, his legacy isn't just about the science of black holes or the nature of time. His real, lasting impact was in reawakening this sense of wonder in all of us. He made the whole world look up at the sky and start asking the biggest questions you can possibly ask.
He spent his entire life confronting the stark reality of his own existence. And in doing that, he taught all of us to question ours on a cosmic scale. He doesn't leave us with easy answers. He leaves us with the curiosity to keep asking. And maybe there's no question bigger or more quintessentially Hawking than this one.